This is Algebra 1, Test 5. We got through Section 2.5, Multiplying Real Numbers. This is Study Guide. First problem asks, which number line can you use to model, or to simplify, negative 5 plus 1? First off, negative 5 is where you're going to start. So any number that's at positive 5, such as B and C, you can't use either one of those. So A and D may work. A says negative 5 plus 1. You know that plus means to go to the right, and minus means to go to the left. So if it goes to the right, we plus 1. On letter D, it says go to the left. That one means minus 1, so D doesn't work as well. A is the only one that works in this case. Begin at negative 5 and add 1, go to the right 1. Simplifying these expressions. Negative 10 plus 2. Opposite signs. Remember, anytime you have opposite signs, use the absolute values and subtract them. So the absolute value of negative 10 is 10, minus the absolute value of 2 is 2. 10 minus 2 is 8. And then the second part is to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. 10 was larger, it was negative, so it's going to be negative 8. Negative 1.3 minus a negative 2 plus 3. Remember, in order to subtract numbers, you want to add the opposite. That's the rule we came up with. That's the rule we did to where we can use all the same steps for addition and subtraction. Negative 1.3 minus a negative means plus a positive 6.2, plus 3.2. So what we did is we created all addition there instead of subtraction. So if you follow the same steps as a second ago for number 2, you use the, we have these two numbers, negative 1.3 and 6.2 are opposite signs. Subtract the absolute values. 6.2 is the larger absolute value minus negative 1.3. The absolute value of 6.2 is 6.2. Remember, it's just the distance from 0 minus the absolute value of negative 1.3 is 1.3. You know, you have to borrow from the 6 and make it 5. So 12 minus 3 is going to be 9. 5 minus 1 is going to be 4. So you have 4.9 there. And then you keep the sign of the larger value. The larger absolute value is 6.2. It was positive, so it's going to be 4.9. Bring the rest of the problem down. Plus 3.2. Now you have the same signs. Remember, same signs. Just add them up. If they were negative, we would add the absolute values. That's an unnecessary step right there. Simply add 2 plus 9 to get 11. Carry your 1. 4 plus 3 is 7. Plus that 1 you carried is 8.1 is the simplified answer. And I know we moved on over from it, but number 3 simplified answer is 8.1. Number 4 says the absolute value of negative 11 minus 6. So the absolute value of negative 11 minus 6. Remember, you want to add the opposite in order to follow the same rules. Negative 11 minus 6 means negative 11 plus a negative 6. Remember, that's the same exact thing. But now we're adding the same signs. Remember, same signs. Just take the absolute values of negative 11, which is 11, and negative 6, which is 6, and add them up. 11 plus 6 is 17. The last part is to keep the common sign. They were the same sign. They were both negative, so you keep the common sign, and it's negative 17. But all of that, if you go all the way back, was in the absolute value symbol. So the absolute value of negative 17, or how far away is from 0 is negative 17. It is 17 away for number 4. And I'm going to erase all of this stuff over here from number 3 just to make some space. But we have 4.7 minus 5.1 minus 4.94 plus 3.2 minus 3.97. So we got a whole bunch of numbers that we got to put together, some of them adding, some of them subtracting. So if you work from left to right, 4.7 minus 5.1 is going to be like 11 minus 7, which is going to be 4. You're going to borrow that from that 5, and it's going to be a negative 0.4. That's just putting 4.7 and minus 5.1 together. You could add them, and you could add the opposites. If you added the opposites, you subtract the absolute values, and you get negative 0.4. So now you have negative 0.4 minus 4.94. We're just taking it in steps, so now it's minus this part here. Same signs, add them up. Since they're both negative in front, they have common signs, add them up. 4.94 plus 0.4 is going to be we're going to have 4 at the end. 9 plus 4 is 13. Carry a 1, and you're going to have 5.34. But the last part is to keep that common sign negative. So now we have negative 5.34 plus this next part, 3.2. Now you have opposite signs again. Opposite signs means you subtract the absolute values. 5.34 minus the absolute value of 3.2 is 3.2. So when you subtract those, 5 minus 3 is 2, 3 minus 2 is 1, and you still have 4 left over, so 2.14. And then the last part of this is to bring down minus 3.97. Okay. Again, opposite sign. So you subtract the larger absolute value, 3.97 is the absolute value of negative 3.97 minus the absolute value of 2.14. When you subtract it there, 7 minus 4 is 3, 9 minus 1 is 8, and 3 minus 2 is 1. And then you keep the sign of the larger absolute value. 3.97 was negative, so at the end of the problem, all of that work you should get back to, for number 5, negative 1.83. Number 6, order of operation problem. Do what's inside parentheses first. 8 plus 6 is 8 plus 16 is 24. That's right next to 8, so that means they're multiplying, but you still have to do what's inside parentheses first. Then it says divide. If your paper looks like plus, make sure you make that division in the middle. Inside the other parentheses, 8 minus 6 is 2. Okay. So now you just go straight across. You don't skip over multiplication to do a division. You simply multiply 8 times 4 and get 32. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 is 192, divided by 2. You know that 2 goes into itself one time, and it goes into, or we'll do it the other way. Look at it this way to where you can see it. 192 divided by 2. It goes into 19 9 times, minus 18 is 1. 2 goes into 12 6 times. So we have 96 is your simplified answer for number 6. Number 7, you are multiplying. This is the last section we did. Multiplying 2 negative terms. That's an even amount. Even amounts means it's going to be positive. So you simply multiply 8.4 and 2.9 and keep the positive value of that. 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 8 is 72, plus the 3 is 75. Put your 0 placeholder. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Add those up. 6, 5, and 8 is 13. 7 and 6 is 13, plus 1 is 14. Carry your 1. 1 and 1 is 2. Then you have to see how many decimal places. 1 time, 2 times. When you move the decimal once, twice, you have the number for, this is number 7, 24.36. 24.36. For number 8, you have negative 5 to the 3rd power. That means negative 5, notice it's in parentheses, times negative 5 times negative 5. That is 3, 1, 2, 3 negative amounts. That's an odd amount. That means at the end it's going to be a negative value. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. Negative 125. The difference between number 8 and number 9 is the parentheses. You're not cubing 7 to the 3rd power. I'm sorry, negative 7 to the 3rd power. You're only cubing 7. 7 times 7 times 7. And then that negative is going to be out front. It's going to come down. So 7 times 7 we know is the number 49. And 49 times 7, we're going to get 63 there. 28 plus 6 is going to be 34. So we're going to get the number 343 from that, and then that negative is going to come down in the front and make it negative 343. Number 10 says to evaluate negative x plus 1.1 when x's value is 7.7. So negative and then x's value is 7.7 plus 1.1. So we have a negative value, and it's not even necessary to have those parentheses in there. We have a negative value adding to a positive value. Just like earlier, opposite signs means you subtract the absolute values. The absolute value of 7.7 is the larger one. minus the absolute value of 1.1. 7.7 minus 1.1 is 6.6. That's the first part you had to do. The second part, remember, is to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. It was negative, so it's negative 6.6. Number 11 says the absolute value of negative x minus 2y when x is 3 and y is negative 5. The absolute value of negative x's value we have right here is 3 minus 2 times y's value we have right here is negative 5. And all of that is in the absolute value symbol. Remember, do what's inside the grouping symbols first. We have negative 3. Negative 2 times negative 5. You multiply before you do any subtraction. Negative times a negative is a positive 10, and it's still in absolute value. Now you have opposite signs, negative 3 and positive 10. You have to subtract the absolute values. 10 is the larger absolute value. So the absolute value of positive 10 is 10, minus the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. Remember, that's the first part. The second part is keep the sign of the larger absolute value. We said 10 was larger. It's positive, so it's going to be positive 7. But remember, the whole thing is still in the absolute value sign. So the absolute value at the very end of that one is 7. Number 12 says simplify 7 minus 6 using the number line. It's positive 7. So at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is where you start on positive value. Minus 6, remember, means to go minus means to go to the left 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That value right there is positive 1. Number 13 through 16 are very similar problems. We're writing expressions. 13 says the sum of g and 2. Sum, that means plus. So g plus 2. 14 says product. That means multiply. M times 10. That's one way to write it, or you can simply write it 10m. Both of those would work. For 15 and 16, you just have to define the variable. 13 and 14, it was given to you. 2 minus a number is an unknown amount, so let's call it x. 2 minus x. The quotient, this is a tough one for everybody, the quotient of 6 times a number and 9. Quotient is that word that means divide. So 6 times a number, let's say n for this one. 6 times n. The quotient of 6 times n and 9 divided by 9. '17 says the total cost to rent a boat is 16 times the number of hours the boat is used. So 16 times the number of hours. Write an equation to model the total cost if H is the number of hours used. So C equals the 16 times the number of hours used. 16 times H. C equals 16H. So if you use that boat for 1 hour, it'd be 16 times 1, $16. If you use it for 10 hours, it'd be 16 times 10, $160. We're writing these fractions in simplest form. What is the largest number that goes into both 12 and 24? 12 goes into both of them. But if you didn't know 12 went into both of them, let's say you thought 6 was the largest number. 6 times what number is 12? 6 times 2. 6 times what number is 24? 4. Look at it again. Ask yourself the question again. Is there a number that goes into both of those? Yes, there is. The number 2 does. 2 times 1 and 2 times 2. Again, if you use the greatest common factor, 12, you'd have did it in one step instead of 2. Writing 8 times 8 times 8 using an exponent means 8 times itself 3 times, or 8 to the third power. Writing 1 to the third power in standard form would be 1 times 1 times 1. I know on the test either last week or the week before, it told you to write it in standard form. This is standard form what I have here. The instructions were a little bit leery. It actually did this, and it said 1 times 1 times 1. It simplified the whole thing out. It evaluated it all the way out. So 1 times 1 times 1 is the correct answer. But if you see something on the test that actually multiplies them out, don't freak out. Just pick that one. 0.003 times 3.9. Just multiply 39 times 3. 3 from this one, 39 from that one. 9 times 3 is 27. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 2 is 11. So we have 117. And then count the decimals. You have to move 1 time for this one, 2, 3, 4 times total. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got to fill in one spot. So 0.0117. 22, we're adding fractions that don't have common denominators. The smallest number that both 4 and 12 go into, though, is easy. It is 12. So we only have to change one of the fractions. You don't have to change this second one because it's multiplying by 1, so it stays as 1 over 12. You do have to change the first one, though. It's multiplying by 3 to become 12, so multiply 2 by 3 to get 6. So now you have common denominator, 6 over 12 plus 1 over 12. Keep that common denominator 12 and add straight across. 6 plus 1 is 7. There's no number that goes into both 7 and 12. Your fraction is simplified. For number 23, again, anytime you add or subtract, you need like denominators. 12 and 8, the smallest number they both go into is the number 24. So we want to change both of the denominators to the number 24. 12 has to multiply by 2 to become 24, so 10 has to multiply by 2 as well, and it becomes 20 over 24. 8 has to multiply by the number 3 to become 24, so 1 times 3 is going to be 3. Now we have a common denominator. It's still subtracting them. Keep the common denominator, 24, and subtract straight across. 20 minus 3 is 17. There is no number that goes into both 17 and 24, so that is your simplified fraction. This next one is a division one. Again, if this one looked like addition on your paper, make sure you make the change now. This says 2/3 divided by 6 over 9. Remember, anytime you have division of fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. Remember, that's a fancy word that means to flip it. 2/3 multiplied by becomes multiplication, 9 over 6. You can cross cancel both of these right here. 3 cross cancels with 9. It goes into itself once, and it goes into 9 3 times. You can also cross cancel 2 and 6. 2 goes into itself once, and it goes into 6 3 times. So watch what's going to happen now. We're still going to wind up simplifying at the end. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And we know that 3 divided by 3 is ultimately going to give us 1 for number 24. If you multiply straight across, you'd got 2 times 9, you'd got 18, and you'd got 3 times 6, you'd got 18 over 18, and you'd still come up with the same number 1. Writing number 25 as a fraction, 0.48. This is the tenths place right here. This is the hundredths place right here. If we went one more space, it'd be the thousands, and then the 10,000s. It would keep going that way. So 0.48 as a fraction is 48 hundredths. So that's it as a fraction, but they want you to write it in simplest form. So pick a number that goes into both of those. You might not know what the biggest number that is. So let's say you know the number 2 goes into them. Watch what's going to happen. 2 times 24 and 2 times 50. That wasn't big enough because there's another number that goes into both of these. 2 times 12 and 2 times 25. Now there is no other number that goes into both 12 and 25. So that is your simplified fraction. 26 says to evaluate u plus x plus y. When u 6, x is 9, and y is 8. Instead of u, we're going to plug in 6, plus, instead of x, we're going to plug in 9, times, instead of 8, we're going to plug in 8. Those two numbers are right next to each other, so that means to multiply. Remember, order of operations tells you to do multiplication first. 9 times 8 is 72, and 72 plus 6 is 78. And then the last one, number 27, says to evaluate AB squared when A is 9 and B is 4. So instead of A, okay.